Welcome back to the Westeros.org YouTube channel. This is not one of the A Song of Ice and Fire videos we promised you now that the Game of Thrones season is over for this year. Instead, it is a video detailing our adventures from last week, when we were invited by Tourism Northern Ireland to discover Northern Ireland, or the Game of Thrones territory as it has been nicknamed based on all the filming locations in the area.
So a while back, the storm Gertrude ended up knocking down a pair of 3-century-old beech trees, which are part of the tree-lined avenue called the Dark Hedges in County Antrim. And these are very iconic, a very popular tourist location, very beautiful. We got to visit ourselves. And it was used at the end of the first episode of the second season as part of the King's Road when we see Arya and Gendry traveling away from King's Landing. So these two trees were knocked down, and Tourism Ireland had this idea of, let's not just let the wood go to waste, let's do something useful with it. And they turned the wood into planks, and these planks into doors, and they had these talented artists turn their minds to it, and they had these doors carved with symbols of Game of Thrones, things that anyone who's watched the show, anyone who's read the books would kind of instantly recognize when they saw it. By symbols, we're talking heraldic creatures, we're talking the locations, we're talking things like ravens and, of course, dragons. And these doors, 10 of them in total, were placed throughout Northern Ireland in various pubs, restaurants, hotels, locations that in most cases are very closely associated with actual filming locations used by the show, which is really useful if you're there to visit, because if you're there to visit just to see Northern Ireland, well, you'll probably want to visit restaurants and pubs. And the pubs in particular are fantastic. And they're very interesting conversation pieces, when you see these doors. But of course, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, and you really just want to see the locations that they filmed at, well, now you have all more reason to go and visit.
Our adventure last week consisted of us spending 4 days in Northern Ireland, tracking down each of the 10 doors, with much help, we should say, from our excellent guide and driver, D. Morgan. And we got to visit each of the doors, and we got to visit many of the filming locations associated with each door. And by doing so, I think we got a lovely taste of Northern Ireland. We covered quite a lot of distance, and still it felt like you were just scratching the surface, because it seems like behind every corner when you're driving there's a new lovely bit of scenery that you might want to visit, some place where you just want to stop and go off on a hike, or a little pub that you'd like to drop in and eat something. And we had some wonderful food, we met some incredibly friendly people, and I think that there's way of looking at, if you want to, as a Game of Thrones fan or a Song of Ice and Fire fan, you could go there and try and, set yourself to visiting all of the doors, and you could have someone along who's not at all interested in that, because there's going to be so much else that they could look at, and a lot of the filming locations are just incredibly scenic nature locations, very beautiful, and there's really something for everyone.
So without further ado, we will get into the first 2 of the doors. For the rest of this week, we're going to try and do 2 doors a day until we get all 10 doors. And we've got some 1 or 2 extra videos about some of the other things we saw and witnessed, experienced. So enjoy!
The ferry across the Strangford Lough will take you to Strangford, where you can find the Kuen Inn. The Kuen is an old inn and guest house, which now, because of its nearness to iconic filming locations for a Game of Thrones, hosts things such as a Game of Thrones dining experience and a Game of Thrones murder mystery evening. And it was also selected for the same reason to be the host of one of the 10 doors. It's located close to Castle Ward, that served as Winterfell, and also Inch Abbey, which was part of the Twins. The door at the Kuen, the first door of the 10, has an image which references the map of Westeros and also elements of the opening sequence of the show.
Portaferry, where Fiddlers Green is located, is right across the law from Strangford, where the Kuen is, and that ferry you saw at the start of the video connects the two locations. What really struck us there is how intimate a pub it is. There are signs reminding you that there's no strangers there, that just friends you've just become acquainted with. And also a clear reminder that song and music is a really important part of the experience at Fiddlers Green. This particular door, the second door of the 10, features these antagonists of the North. You have the flayed man of House Bolton, and in particular, you have a really magnificent kraken representing House Greyjoy.
We hope you have enjoyed this look at the first 2 of the Game of Thrones doors. Tomorrow we will be back with doors 3 and 4, located at the Percy French in Newcastle and at Blake's of the Hollow in Inniskillen.